What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Fall of X, and we're here with X-Men number 26, and this is gonna have a crazy moment with Kitty Pryde. So what this does is this picks up in the aftermath of, or really kind of taking place during the time that we saw in Invincible Iron Man, when Iron Man was meeting with Emma Frost after the fall of Krakoa and the invasion of Orchis and so on and so forth. What we didn't know, and what was really interesting, was that in the Invincible Iron Man comics, suddenly Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, had just become like the White King of the Hellfire Club, right? One of the most influential groups in the world that would really allow him to operate in a way that would help to safeguard the surviving mutants on Earth in a way that something just really couldn't be done by anybody else. The way this played out is that in this moment when Tony Stark had left Emma Frost in the sewers in Invincible Iron Man, Wilson Fisk appeared, right? And he really brought out this really amazing point where he said, if they have not already, Orchis will move to seize your considerable assets, resources that will be needed for our war effort. Now, that's one of the things to remember. Orchis is a governmental organization, right? They're pretty nefarious. They do some shady stuff, but they are joined, or really kind of made up of, all these different groups from all these different sectors: SHIELD, Hydra, Advanced Idea Mechanics, the whole nine yards. And they stand as a direct opponent of any mutant groups or any mutant rights that exist out there in the Marvel Universe. With that being the case, with mutants now being branded public enemy number one, they have no more rights. And so going through and taking money out of their bank accounts, seizing their assets, would be one of the first things to do. Lest we forget, with Emma Frost, she's got a very, very lengthy history. And so using her powers for her own ends is something that she's done over the years and made herself basically a millionaire or a billionaire. I don't know if Marvel actually states how much money she has, but she does have quite a bit. And so the first thing they would do is seize all the money she has at her disposal. This is one of the reasons, or really kind of how, Wilson Fisk became the Black King of the Hellfire Club, because what he would be able to do is effectively move her money from her accounts into accounts that are owned by the Hellfire Club. And now it's their money, not her money. And the Hellfire Club is not a target of Orchis, and there's no way they would be able to get a warrant to seize those assets in the first place. So it's putting her money in a safe place. It's one of the ways in which he demonstrated himself as being exceedingly important to the forces of the mutants who survive on Earth. The other part of this, and unless you read Secret Empire, you wouldn't know about this, but it's one of the coolest elements of Kingpin, that when Secret Empire took place, Captain America conquered the United States and so on and so forth, New York was kind of sent away to like some dark dimension where it was very difficult for anybody to stay alive. But Wilson Fisk basically kept crime at bay. But he told people in the city, in exchange for keeping you safe here, all I ask is that when the time comes, you vote for me. So that when he ran to become the mayor of New York City, that guy ended up winning because of all the people who saw him as someone that was in their corner. And so despite the fact that he's not really the mayor anymore, he still has a vast amount of influence. The biggest role he has in influence is bending the courts to his favor. That's the coolest thing, right? Because now they have a guy that can control, or at least help to control, government on a local level that can stand in the way of Orchis, basically making a hassle for mutants within the city of New York. It's not all encompassing. He can't just turn New York City into a safe haven for mutants, but he can do a lot to get in the way of Orchis. Now, the other part of this is Tony Stark. While yes, at the moment, Tony Stark is flat broke, right? The guy has no money. And of course, you can find out about that at the playlist at the end of this video. The fact is, he's still an Avenger, and the Avengers are still working on behalf of the X-Men, albeit in secret and taking pot shots. Because if the Avengers come out and they say, we side with the mutant population, public opinion is so against the mutant population, it would turn on the Avengers. So it would literally make their life harder. And so in response to this, Tony Stark is just kind of like the Black King of the Hellfire Club. And so he's kind of the Avengers liaison to the X-Men. Now, the other part of this is, of course, Miss Kendall. That's the fake persona of Emma Frost, right? It's the identity she uses along with the ring she wears. Because remember, there is technology that exists out there, and we still don't know who created it as far as I'm aware. Unless I missed something, we still don't know who it was that did it. But effectively, there's little pieces of jewelry you can wear, little trinkets, things like that, that will mask your mutant identity so that the Sentinels that are out there, or any artificial intelligence technology, will not not be able to detect the mutant gene. And so Tony Stark, as he's here, is the playboy. He's the guy who isn't really the billionaire anymore, but people still see him with the devil may care, you know, drunk kind of attitude, that sort of thing. And that when he gets into a room with Miss Kendall, he's like, thanks for the save, Emma. This is dope. It's really, really cool. The reason why is because Tony Stark is putting on the act. The world sees him as the irresponsible billionaire guy who masquerades as Iron Man, doesn't really care about anything other than himself. Behind the scenes, Tony Stark is a wholly different person than the guy that he was back then. Society doesn't realize it, and even if they did, they probably wouldn't acknowledge it. But him working alongside Emma shows the guy he really is, which is basically this notion that he's aware of Firestar in Orchis. Now, for those of you guys who don't know what that means, Firestar is a mutant, and at the very beginning of Fall of X, when Orchis launched their strike against Krakoa, before Jean Grey died, she basically modified the memories of everybody in Orchis who believed that Firestar was the one that turned against the X-Men. Now, the good thing about this is that it allowed Firestar to basically exist within Orchis and gather intel, with Orchis being none the wiser to Jean Grey's modifications. The downside to this is every mutant in existence thinks she's a traitor. They think that she turned on the whole mutant population and ratted them out. And so Miss Kendall, right, Emma Frost's meeting with Tony is her asking the question, is Firestar in the Orchis facilities, right? Is that your quote unquote optics, right? The sources of intel that you have within Orchis. And while he won't necessarily come clean, her response is, if she's your mole, tell her she's been targeted by a rogue mutant assassin who she has no hope of surviving. If she's not your mole, then I'll go fetch an urn from the basement. And so this literally tells Tony Stark, let her know what's happening, because if you don't, she's gonna die, right? She needs to be able to prepare. Now, there is a whole thing with Miss Marvel, right, Kamala Khan, where she continues to do virtually nothing within the Fall of X stories, right? She's literally just been useless the entire time, right? And I don't say that because I hate her character. I say it because, like, she's literally been doing nothing the entire time. Like, literally just doing nothing at all. And so what we end up doing is we jump to what's called the Bloom, right? Orchis' space station above Earth. And we pick up with Kitty Pryde. And I know you guys love Kitty Pryde. You guys love what Marvel's been doing with Kitty Pryde during Fall of X. And I do too, man. I absolutely love what they've been doing with her character, because she's just so deadly now, right? Like, she's like the deadliest mutant in Marvel Comics. One of the things that she's done here, right, just to show how far her powers go and what she's capable of, she's been stowing away in the hull of a ship. And what she's been doing is using scuba gear so she can breathe oxygen to keep herself alive, lest she ends up succumbing to the vacuum of space and essentially dies, right? As soon as she gets into the Orchis facility, as you would expect, all the alarms go off. And she expected exactly that, right? Like, she had planned multiple escape routes, all that stuff. Kitty Pryde the assassin is dope. Firestar in her cell comes to the realization, after being contacted by Tony Stark, that basically Kitty Pryde doesn't know about Jean Grey's tampering. So as far as Kitty Pryde's concerned, she's here to kill a traitorous X-Man, and that's it. Right now, here's one of the coolest things Kitty Pryde does, because you guys love to see all the different ingenious ways that she kills people, which is pretty dope. I mean, hey, let's be honest with ourselves, right? It's pretty solid. Like, once she gets in here, she breaks the neck of one of the guards that runs up on her. Then she grabs the other guy, right? Knocks him off his feet, grabs him by the foot, drops him through the hull of the ship, except she makes him re-solidify halfway through. He gets cut in half. So like, his upper torso is just drifting through the vacuum of space. It's hardcore, man. I'll be honest with you guys. When we get Kitty Pryde in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is the one that I kind of want to see, right? I want to see just like the assassin, murderous Kitty Pryde. You never really get to see her all that often in Marvel Comics, and it's so awesome to see her here. And so with her standing outside the cell of Firestar, Firestar initially addresses her, right? Like, Kitty Pryde, like, if you're outside that door, I need to talk. I have a crazy story to tell you. Kitty Pryde literally holds her breath, phases herself through the hull of the ship, makes herself intangible, comes around to the other side and attacks Firestar, right? Like, I mean, this is how deadly this girl is. And that's what's so cool, is because Firestar tries to explain what's going on. She, of course, turns into her flaming form, which basically makes her intangible, right? So Kitty Pryde can't really kill her using her sword or anything like that. So they're basically at a stalemate. right? And so that's when Firestar's like, look, at the gala, when it was clear we'd lost, Jean Grey telepathically inserted memories into Stasis' head about recruiting me and being a double agent so I could help whoever survived in whatever way I could. And before she could tell anybody else, she died. And now I'm here alone trying to do what I can. And I didn't ask for this, but Jean did it anyway and said I had to volunteer. But I didn't really even volunteer. And I didn't even want to be an X-Man, but now I am. I know that I can be important. I can be of service. I am a mutant and I'm proud. I resist, right? It's some straight up John Wick stuff. I will serve, I will be of service. Like, it's a really cool thing. And so in response to this, you have her asking the question of Kitty Pryde, I know you don't believe me, but you have to believe that all of this is true. Kitty Pryde's response, that's the most Jean Grey thing that Jean Grey would ever do. And it's true, right? It's like the most Jean Grey thing. She's done that multiple times over the years, because one of the things to forget is that Kitty Pryde has been part of the X-Men ever since she was like a preteen, right? When she was like 13, 14, 15 years old. She's been in the X-Men for an incredibly long time, longer than she hasn't been in the X-Men. She's experienced virtually everything that you can experience being an X-Man. It's why she led her own X-Men team at one point along the line. It's how she's become so deadly. And so knowing Jean Grey as well as she does, she's like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, of course, she tells her like the final punch was to basically just make the whole thing look good, you know, so on and so forth. But where Firestar asked the question, who else survived? The response of Kitty Pryde is, I don't know. And even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. She's playing it safe here, right? It's not a lack of trust. It's the fact that when you have any kind of organized resistance, you never want to have one person who knows everything, because all you have to do is get a hold of that one person and the entire resistance force comes crashing down. So it's better to compartmentalize it all. Iron Man knows some stuff. Emma Frost knows some stuff. Kingpin knows some stuff. Kitty Pryde knows some stuff, and that's it, right? Like, no one knows everything. It's like what Nick Fury said in The Winter Soldier, right? Like, no one has all the pieces. And so it's really, really awesome to see her functioning in this way, because she's just one piece of a much bigger system. She even goes so far as to tell Firestar, don't take it personally, right? It's just the way that you run an effective resistance. But even when Firestar asked the question, like, will you tell everybody else out there that I'm on their side? The response of Kitty Pryde, yet again predicting the most intelligent route, is to say no, because the best thing for your cover is to have X-Men trying to take pot shots at you and trying to kill you. And she says, because lest you forget, you're considered a traitor by every X-Man in existence, right? Every mutant that survived in existence. How strange would it be if in the midst of all of this, no one who was a mutant tried to kill you for your traitorous actions? Orchis would start asking questions, because they're not dumb. They're incredibly intelligent, and they would figure out that something was off. Then they start doing mental scans, then they start realizing their memories have been meddled with, right? So the safest thing for you to do is to basically just stay here and treat every instance where an X-Man or any mutant out there that tries to kill you is basically just part of your training, because, you know, that's just what you're gonna have to contend with. And so following that, you have a meetup between Kitty Pryde and Emma Frost. Now, this is incredibly important here. And the reason why is because when the alert was sent to Firestar by Tony Stark, the concern of Emma Frost was that basically it wouldn't get there soon enough, and that Kitty Pryde would end up killing Firestar. Kitty Pryde showing up here and basically saying, no, like, everything's cool, everything's copacetic. Tony Stark's information coming from Firestar and Orchis will remain intact, because that's its source, right? That's his mole in Orchis, is Firestar. She's the one that feeds him information, right? I understand what's going on now. I get everything that's happening. I won't try to kill her again. The next question that Emma Frost has is, what's going on with Cyclops? Because for those of you guys who don't remember, Cyclops is alive, but he was taken by Orchis. His eyes were sewn shut in a pretty gruesome way, so he can't fire his optic blast, but we don't fully know what they intend to do with him. Presumably, they intend to, like, harvest his DNA, make different duplicates out of him. If Sinister's motivation, or at least Dr. Stasis' motivation being a clone of Sinister, if it's the same as it always was, his goal is to use the genetic material of Cyclops to produce some kind of uber mutant that he could use to wipe out all the other mutants in existence, right? That was the nature of Nate Gray, X-Man in Marvel Comics back in the 90s. Sure, he wasn't designed to kill every mutant in existence, but he was astronomically powerful. One of the most powerful mutants to ever exist in the history of Marvel Comics, right? So again, there's a lot of possibility here, but the issue is that Emma Frost wants to know where Cyclops is. And so because of that, she agrees to team up with Kitty Pryde. The two of them will go on a mission together and they will try to find Cyclops and kill whoever's in their path. And I'll be honest with you guys, Kitty Pryde, with what she's capable of, teaming up with one of the most powerful telepaths in existence, an Omega level telepath, they would take all comers, right? They would annihilate anybody who stands in their way. What's crazy about this is that when Emma Frost goes back into the Hellfire Club to meet with Tony Stark to tell him what she intends to do, she sees Fei Long, right? Why does Fei Long matter? Because he's the guy that basically took over Stark Industries and turned the Iron Man armor suits into Sentinels that were tasked with tracking down mutants. She hates this guy. She despises this guy, right? She sees this guy as really the most hated enemy she has in the here and now. There's more hated enemies than him, but it's the guy that she seemingly hates the most at the moment. Tony Stark snatches her up, pulls her to the side and says, look, I totally get that you seeing this guy here is a shock, but here's the thing. That guy's got information that I need, and you are a telepath. He doesn't know that you're a telepath. The ring on your finger simply blocks them from being able to track your mutant signature. It does not take away your powers. So what I need you to do is go out there as your normal self, scan that guy's mind, right? Break through any mental blocks that he may have, and give me the information that I need. Because what Tony Stark is doing secretly behind the scenes is building a ridiculously overpowered Iron Man suit that would allow him to take on pretty much all of these Sentinels. But it takes time, and he needs to know the ins and outs of how the Sentinels function in order to build his Iron Man suit in a way that can overcome the power of the Sentinels and Fei Long. The problem here is that she goes to take off her ring, she knees Iron Man in the gut, and then when Fei Long happens to walk in, it looks like he's proposing to her. And so in response to this, Emma Frost contacts Kitty Pryde and says, hey, something came up. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to join you. The response of Kitty Pryde is, me too. Because for Kitty Pryde, this is a feeling of betrayal, right? It's another instance where she's just kind of left out there on her own. And so it's a huge moment for a character because now potentially Emma Frost and Tony Stark have made themselves enemies of Kitty Pryde, and God help their souls if she decides to come after them. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. If you need to get caught up on Fall of X, make sure you guys click this link to the playlist, and I will catch you all later. Peace.